Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, Saturday edition. And if you are on YouTube and watching this, you'll see a little link. You can actually join us here if you'd like to in Zoom. If you are an attendee and you're looking at all these panelists, and as we talk, you'll think that you might know more than us, and you might. And we'd love to have you come in and be part of this conversation. We've got a great panel today. Today is a lot of people showed up for today, so it's going to be a good day for Q&A. But it always gets better as more people jump on. So hopefully we'll see more of you jump into the panel. If we open the doors at 6 o'clock, you don't have to come at 6, but it's a wide-ranging conversation between 6 and 6:40. It's usually a lot of fun. I think we ranged between old Star Wars stories and talking about what else were we talking about this morning?
Burritos.
What burritos? We ended with burritos. Yeah, absolutely. But and some technical
printing
stuff in between. Yeah, 3D printing. So that was this morning, but it's different every morning, and we're just sitting there chatting. So 6 o'clock's a lot of fun. So and then at 6:40 we put out the Discord link. The Discord link is where over 800 of us keep talking about this stuff between shows. At about the same time, we're going to do mic checks. Once we do the mic checks, we're closing it up. That's the panel. Now we make it an exception on Saturdays to allow the educators who want to come in at 8 o'clock, come in for the second hour, which is all about education. Each day, the first hour is always general Q&A. And really, it's up to you on what we talk about. You are the producers if you're watching. What you ask, if you're watching in Zoom or listening to Makana, not on YouTube. If you're listening to this right now, you don't use the chat function. It doesn't work. If you are in the chat and you're asking questions and you're voting those questions up and down, you're the producers. The order that we ask these questions and what we ask is all up to you. So it's really your responsibility to keep those questions rolling. Second hour is a specific conversation. So usually on Mondays is kind of a wild card. Tuesdays is audio. Wednesdays is camera. Thursdays is artists, and Friday is events. Now that's new, and I think we had a good conversation yesterday on our first try, and then Saturday is education. Sunday is kind of just 2 hours of us chatting. So that's kind of how all of this is structured. If you want to share this and let other people know about it, you can. Put in Mukana, there's the link. Use that link. Don't use your own link. Otherwise, people come in as you. It's not a good form. Anyway, all right, Bill, you ready to ask some questions?
I am ready to ask some questions, and the first one from Stuart Fairweather in Melbourne, Australia is extremely appropriate. 200 shows. What was the thing panelists learned that they were most surprised by?
200. I don't know if anyone knows that reference. 200 shows. So what? A lot of you have been here for most of them. So what surprised you about this? Go ahead, Bill.
If you had told my wife that all those months ago that I would be getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day to get ready for something at 6 o'clock, she would have laughed for a day. And it's been so much fun and so exciting to be able to chat with all of you on the panel and everybody who's asked questions at home, that it's really been surprisingly a joy to do, not a task. That's what surprised me.
Yeah, I will say that I'm surprised that literally every day there was one day where I was doing that ILM job that I had to edit until 3 a.m. and get up at 5 or edit until 3:30 and get up at 5 and that one hurt. But other than that one day, it is effortless for me. Like it's just my pattern, and I don't know if I've done anything 200 times in a row or almost 200 times in a row. Some of you have taken over for some of my productions, but it's just easy to get up and hang out with all of you. Go ahead, Victor.
So your knowledge and the ability for this group to fail forward and kaizen their way to looking and sounding better every day has just blown me away. I mean, to every person, it's just been a wonderful experience to watch all of us grow, including me, long way from the basement in the background for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Go ahead, Sky.
This is a safe space. That's pretty amazing at a technical level that is expected, but to fail upward. And also my takeaway is the flip of content is king to community is king, and content is the honey that brings it. So thank you. Yeah. You got a lot of honey here.
What I think is interesting is that we have a panel that you can come in and you can ask a very, very basic question about something, and we're happy to answer that. And then you can ask a super technical question, and someone here knows the answer. And it's just like this wide range of, because of stuff that I'm always amazed at. And there'll be different people in this panel that will go off on like someone will answer something, and Beju had that answer yesterday that was just like this super dense. Like he's obviously been thinking about it a lot. And I was just like, where did that come from? Like, it was just like this long list of really tight things. Mickey does it all the time, but there's different people, and Victor, literally an incredible Thursday, that of between all the different pieces and bouncing around, and Jason and everyone here. I mean, Stuart comes up with these things that just pop out, but everybody here has these technical, things that come up. I think of Courtney, of course, as prompting, but then he has 3D printing and wiring and circuitry and all these other things, and I'm like, he's a lot of flags there. So anyway, it's with everyone. I think that it's a really fascinating thing that we've kind of collected that I didn't expect. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Thought I wasn't the next one. Okay, simply, first of all, how to hold my hand up for a long period of time.
There's a muscle there that we've all built up. I'm working on a way to get rid of all of that too, but hopefully November. Yeah. So
secondly, all the friends that I've amassed from here, all the people that have created conversations and relationships post office hours, and then finally, big tribute up to Mike Andrews there. He drove a lot of things as well, and I know he's watching from up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason?
I'd say like a combination of both the knowledge of this group, but also the collective humility of this group has been truly impressive to me. We have an incredibly accomplished and an incredibly smart group of people who are also fairly open to what they don't know, which to me is an extremely rare combination.
Well, and I think that that's the key, and this is trying to keep a culture going a certain direction, and people, able to do that is a challenging structure. Go ahead, John Preto.
I think it's ironic that we've reached 200, which is the same amount of microphones that Paul has in his room.
I think the same number that he's used. Paul, do you have 200 mics? I bet you do. No, you don't know? All right, Gav.
I think it's important we explain also to everybody that combined, there's probably 1,000 years of experience sitting in this. And from all areas, all aspects, writing, directing, sound, editing, we're all here. We've all got experiences from different sizes. And I think that's the most important thing. Anybody can ask any question. Oh, and finally, to the panelists, attendees, don't worry about your questions sounding obvious. The most obvious question is often the most important that rarely gets answered properly. So don't be afraid. Answer. Ask as well.
What I also find interesting is that we'll get the same question, but we answer it differently every time. Like, it depends on who's in the panel and where we and what we've thought about between then. And so it's not a problem, and it's an interesting. And I think that even when we have simple questions, we just riff off of it, and it turns into something.
The truth is, every program or feature, whatever we make, is unique to that particular thing. We use the same kit, but we always use it ever slightly differently, different manner, different terms, depending on what it is we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Fenwick?
Yeah,
Stuart. Then
I remember, like, the first question I ever asked, I raised my hand and I said, so I keep everybody talking about this thing. What is this thing, WebRTC? And literally, Preto and Leland, they started laughing at me. But it's okay. It's okay to ask basic questions. I've learned so much in the last 200 days. It's stupid.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot. I learn stuff every day. I mean, I feel like we have this wisdom, I think, that we're acquiring because we're all in it and we're working on it, and we're then crossing, just this we're trading notes at an incredible velocity. And I think that that's the thing. Like, what I really got out of working at ILM was the fact that if you didn't understand morphine, you could walk over to the guy that wrote it, and if I had questions about Photoshop, I could ask John Knoll, and so you were able to ask folks that really knew what they were talking about, and the rate it at learning increase dramatically. And I think that that's what we get here is that, there's almost any question you can ask, but it's not just the questions. This is the thing. And this is why I think this group session is so important. It's not just the questions, it's the other questions that other people ask. So there's other things that other people are trying to figure out that we're just kind of absorbing as part of that conversation. And then we know who to ask when that doesn't, when we need to know more, or we know, or we're just learning things that we're not even working on yet. Go ahead, Stuart.
One of the things I've learned just comes from looking at the panel and seeing the varied backgrounds that everybody's got from all over the world, for various levels of the community, and how willing everybody is to share knowledge and bring that forward, pay it forward to anybody who needs it. One thing I do notice, and I've asked a question about it before, looking at the panel, is we need to get more women in the technical fields. But I think in industry, we're doing more about that than a lot of other industries are, as shown by our guest the other night doing teleprompting. So we're an example of how to share knowledge and how to help pay it forward to everybody else who wants to grow their careers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Go ahead, Nikki.
Yeah, one thing that certainly surprised me, like in terms of what I've learned to be comfortable to be, like, in essence, be in front of the camera, like, well, in front of the webcam, because like I'm a behind the scenes guy. Like, I just get
we couldn't get you to turn your camera on for quite a few times. There was this kind of constant, hey Mickey, and you were like, no, you're not going to turn the camera on, and that would have been a huge loss for us if you had never stepped forward.
I know how you feel,
like,
Mickey.
Yeah, like I mean, I just get work done. That's what I do, and I'm not comfortable. Well, usually not comfortable like speaking in front of people, but like that, I guess through this I've kind of learned to get a little bit more,
Great.
Comfortable with it. And sorry, quick thing. Oh, I just saw that you handed me host. Cool, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, TJ.
The willingness or the acceptance of the panel for people who are not experienced in video production, film production, to come in and join and say, just be part of the group and hang out. And the willingness of the professionals amongst the group to not be afraid to ask questions themselves, to not just say, I know everything, but I don't know everything, and learn from everybody else.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Guy, or I'm sorry, George first and then Guy.
So I have this saying that I normally bring to all my show sites. I always say to the guys or gals, you know what I know, you know what you know, and I know what I know. And with this group, it goes across the board. Everyone knows something different. And you definitely don't have to fight who knows the most or who doesn't know a lot. And I really appreciate being able to send you a backdoor message, or, just be open about what you know or what you don't. And it's okay. Because, it doesn't make you weak or stronger. It just makes you a better person when you admit that you don't know something, and, you can always learn.
Yeah, no, absolutely. John? I'm sorry. I get there's so many people with the names up. I'm getting the Guy and then John and then Hosmuk. There we go.
Yeah, the time that I could remember falling literally off my chair was when Jeff Keithley showed Sienna Cloud, and he brought up the switcher. And when I saw it, I was just like, this is the future. And it was just like, pow, it just hit me like I'm seeing it, because I knew the bandwidth behind it with the SRT and the NDI. And once I saw the infrastructure, I was like, this is just gorgeous that somebody would put this up there for all of us to see at no charge. I mean, he's just a giving guy, and him and I had a couple conversations and offline, and he's helped me just see the future. So it's cool. The future is bright.
Absolutely. John?
I was just going to say that to echo off of what TJ said, this is a really open forum, and I'm not an audio video guy. I'm a computer guy, and so I'm able to come in here and learn stuff that helps me do my job better, dealing with Zoom meetings and things like that. And I've really appreciated that. There's so many little tricks and tips that have helped.
Well, and I think that one of the powers is that we do have IT people in here, and we do have other people that are able to answer those questions. It's not what I think that one of the things that is really important is that we aren't a bunch of camera operators. We're not a bunch of sound people. We're not a bunch of, post production. And because that's a monoculture, and what I think one of the things that's really powerful about this is that it is this heterogeneous mix of people of, a lot of experience in one place, not a lot in others. And we're filling in all these gaps for each other in a way that I don't think I've ever found before. Where because you just keep on ending up in monocultures where you talk about all the same things. You get really good at those things, but you're not spreading that out. Hasmukh?
At the beginning when I joined, I was very anxious about saying anything because I could see that you had to manage this process quite a bit, be firm at times, I guess a little rough at times, and that scared the hell out of me. So I didn't want to provoke anything, so I kind of kept pretty much mute for a long time. But I think I equate this group as an orchestra with different levels of skill in terms of musicians. But I think this orchestra would have been totally chaotic and we wouldn't have music if the conductor wasn't leading this orchestra initially as firmly as he had to, but releasing that firmness over time as everybody settled down and everybody understood the rules of the game. I really appreciate your emphasis on having this show as a clean show. I think that's exceptional. So I really want to salute you, Alex, as the conductor of this orchestra. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And I've gotten to do this a couple times. I built online for communities a couple of times. And so each one of them you go, well, these are the things that it's not like my commitment to a clean show is that my wife found out that I insist on a clean show and she laughed out loud. It's not my natural state. So it's it was.
I'd like to hear the other side of you.
No, my kids thought it was funny too because it's not my natural state. So anyway, but I think that we want to create a structure where everyone feels included. My commitment is a global conversation where no one's left out. And that's what I've been working on since the early 90s. I had to write a little mission statement for my life and that was it, 30 years ago. And so, I think that figuring that out, and I think that, we are missing, if you're a woman watching this, we are missing women coming in here. I feel like I'm still, but what I do feel like we've succeeded at is, if you look at just this panel, we have people coming in from all over the world, almost every continent. There's people joining us, and that's kind of an amazing thing. And we saw some of this in the Pixel Core when we were doing it as a membership, but it was that we just seamlessly did that, but you couldn't see it, and you couldn't have that conversation and the technology wasn't there, to do that. And so we couldn't do this show without Zoom. This would have never worked in Meet. It would have never worked in Teams. It just wouldn't have worked. It is this happenstance of an infrastructure of great people showing up, an infrastructure that makes this work. And that's what happens. A lot of times you're trying to figure I've been trying to figure this out for decades. And it's just this, Discord is just the right thing for what we're doing. Mukana, something that I think helps a lot. Zoom. And so we have these things that are all kind of mixing together that are just in the right place at the right time. Go ahead, John, and then Vipul. Oh, your sync is perfect.
But I first thanking you, Alex, for starting this, but I was, and this is 200, but I think back to the first 20 or 30 of these, the impact that this group had. As you remember, the pandemic hit, we were using new tools, and it's clear that things that we discussed and tested and problems we found and reports that we did impact what the technology did. My son and I spent many days, talking about things that we talked about here and it got fixed or got pointed out or got modified. So this group, it's great to have the friends, and this is networking on steroids. But we really started by really helping the whole country, the world, get into this new method of communicating. And that to me was the most amazing thing, that we brought this many people from this diverse areas and solved problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what I keep on, I think part of why this Zoom works so well in some ways is because there's that symbiotic relationship between Zoom and us that things are getting, some things progress, and so we're able to do things we know that things are getting. I have a lot of faith that new features are coming out that are going to be advantageous to us, just because I know we're being listened to, at least. Maybe not everything can be done tomorrow, but it is there definitely an impact there. Vipul?
This office hour actually came in my life at a very right time. In the beginning of the lockdown, before lockdown, I was active for almost like 18 hours. And just in the beginning of lockdown, somehow one of my friends turned positive. So I was quarantined for 14 days in my bedroom with just laptop with me, nothing else, no gears, nothing. So I was in attendee those 15 days, and that's where my real encounter started. Then I came out, started putting my camera and all these things, and whatever we have learned, say, me and Baiju are working in a team, and we have an upcoming event in the end of this month. We are bringing so many values from whatever we have learned here for that event, which is going to be cross-country. Some feeds coming from different parts of India, some feeds coming from all across North America. We are integrating them in New Jersey and broadcasting it to the world and all these things. Very challenging event, and everything done by volunteers, but we were able to educate all our volunteers or bring them to that level where we are confident that we'll be able to handle that event on our own. So a lot of personal attachment with office hours and all good friends here, that we are learning a lot and contributing to the society and everybody else here.
It's fantastic. It's great. Brian?
Well, and the reach beyond just this group. So there's people out, asking questions in Mokana, and I'm not answering many. I'm here to learn mostly, because there's way smarter people. But I get friends, colleagues, acquaintances, former coworkers who call me asking me for questions, answers to questions that they have. They don't know about this group, but all of a sudden I go, oh, I know that because I learned it here. So the reach is going way beyond what's happening on these mornings.
Yeah. And it's not just the quality of the answers, it's the quality of the questions. That's the thing that is so important about having at least 100 people here, as a group, is that the questions and the kind of people that we've been able to attract, is that the questions drive the conversation and allow us to keep on learning. So it's everyone that's not necessarily in the panel, and some of the people in the panel that are asking those questions and pushing that conversation forward from real life challenges. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was a little bit of a late arriver to this group, and hesitant to join at first, and I was so amazed that there's such a collection of audio, visual, and network specialists that are all insomniacs or late owls like me. And if I had listened to your advice, I wouldn't look like a plum sitting on top of a grapefruit today.
It's great to have you, Courtney. Sky?
I'm just, again, to listen to the ripple effect, and I'm thinking of Hasmukh. He's influencing governments, and that people John is influencing organizations. And I know we've got teachers up in different parts of the world that are influencing leaders. And this civil conversation in the midst of an uncivil discourse of communication is just a respite of sanity for me. So again, I'm grateful on many levels: technical, emotional, psychological, even spiritual. So, wow.
Anyway, thank everyone. Thank you to everyone who is here in the panel, the attendees. It's just really, great to have all of you as part of this community. So hopefully we'll keep on growing it and making it better. So next question, Bill.
Stuart is back kind of with 200 shows. Who was the favorite guest of the long-term panelists? Who did we like the best?
Go ahead, John.
I think the numbers show that the highest show that we ever did was Leo, and
for guests.
For guests.
Yep.
Yeah.
Leo, I thought we were going to break it. I thought that we would hit we got to 493 concurrent. So we were right up there. I was like, oh, we're gonna start kicking people out. I mean, I knew that we were in trouble. I mean, I knew that we might be in trouble when 10 minutes before I looked up and we were over 300. I was like, okay, this is gonna be, and the numbers have changed a little bit because we have more people watching on YouTube and we have more people time shifting, so, and it was why, admittedly, I resisted doing it in the early days. I resisted streaming to YouTube was that I knew that I needed a certain number of people willing to show up live or the show won't get done. And so I couldn't make it available on YouTube for a while until we got to a certain size. And now it's, now we're letting that span out because you need a certain critical mass to do the show the way we do it. Jason and then Paul and then Bill.
Leo was consistently, I mean, and just for those who haven't ever seen Leo Laporte first, where have you been? But for everybody else, he's consistently interesting in interviews. One of the ones that stands out to me is the guy that did sound on Naked and Afraid. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
In fact, I watched, I think it was the second season of that show specifically to see what he was talking about. And it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really excited about the music guests that we had. I'm looking forward to doing more of that because I just feel like there's something about it that lets us do something else, and think and really think about that creative process as well. Go ahead, Bill.
The two there's all of them stand out, and there was a lot of people who have been on. This has been fabulous. The two that stood up when we did the space group and talked about sacrificial microphones and how people actually do their job around a spaceship launch for all intents and purposes. That was fascinating. And the other one was the second time you did a performer, and I don't know why, but the young woman, and I don't remember her name, and I should shoot myself. Daria. I thought Daria connected in a way with music that I think shows a lot of plus for the future of this kind of format. She really
She's a master of it. She's been doing it for a long time. Like she's been talking to people online with Hangouts and everything else for 10 years, and so she's really good at it.
She was fabulous.
The Chris Summers series was fantastic, and every time I saw it, I learned more and more.
Yeah, Chris is amazing to have on over and over again. I can't wait. He's going to have lots of news stories for us eventually when he gets back from his travels. Sky.
Well, Alex4D also brought, again, his historic information, but again, to Victor, our musician in the room that shared his skills, but Daria, and I didn't realize I was so, when you don't have something and all of a sudden it just fills you and just speaks to you, so the resonation, and then Peter Himmelman, that actually was available to come on my show, was just a gift and then a gift, and so it's awesome.
It's great. Guy and then Jeffrey, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, all the Stephen Bays ones were great.
Yes. I was like, I was always like, holy smokes, we have the former senior product manager for Final Cut talking about Final Cut. Just amazing. And he's great. And just so you know, in the behind the scenes, obviously he didn't get up there and riff. I mean, like he was showing up for an hour. That was like a day and a half of prep for him every time he showed up for us. We were just fortunate that he was caught in COVID and he had a little extra time, but he was stressed about it every single time because he comes from Apple and he's Steve and he just, so we were getting an incredible treat and we still bring him back. I'm just saying that when we get him back, I have to give him, always want to give him a rest because he's really making sure that we get top value.
Yeah. So Stephen and then Brian Vander Ark of the Verve Pipe, when he did that song, I mean, it was great getting to know him first. And then when he did this song, I remember the hairs on my arm standing up. I mean, it was just like chilling. So, it was great. So thank you for bringing him.
Absolutely. I got some big plans for that too. Like, I think that there's more, I want to do a lot with, I came out of Sony music, so I want to do a lot more with musicians. And so it's, so we're going to have a lot of fun with that. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of, I can't really pin down one specific person, but the one thing that I really enjoy about everybody, including John Roche, which we just had a couple days ago, was the ability to actually ask him. And most of them I've asked 2 or 3 questions out of their time, and got some really cool insight into people that, first of all, technically I didn't know existed, and second of all, once I realized who they are and what they did, how they inspired me in creating the content that I create nowadays, and that's just the best takeaway out of any guest that comes on, including the panel.
Absolutely. Okay, we're gonna move on. Go back to more questions. We've spent half an hour on our little 200, and now we've got a stack of questions that we need to burn through. But anyway, again, thank you all.
Tucker Drago needs to be honored.
Yes, Tucker. Tucker, if you're listening to this, come back.
You're here in spirit, if not in person.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Okay, James from Dublin writes in, "Scoosh, hot, crushed, great phrases. Each of you have different audio chains. When the panel, when the panel does the mic checks, what are you adjusting? From zoom volumes to mix presettings, what are the different sliders and buttons you adjust to hit Mickey's magic level?"
I know I have a mixer, so I'm going through a Scorpio, and so I'm changing my gain, on mine. And I think that for most of the mix pre's, you're changing gain. I think if you have something that's direct, you're kind of stuck with Zoom's controller to make that work. Any other, Jason?
That's going to be profoundly different, of course, for all of us. But I just assume that he wants some sort of diversity of answers. So mine, for example, what I'm turning up and down is the Aphex channel has an output knob, and the Aphex, for those don't know, is just an all-in-one preamp and total, get it done. I will mess with the output if I have to, and if not, just on a hardware panel, turning up and down that individual microphone, and then it goes into an embedder. That's much more consistent, I think, than messing with it software ways.
Mickey and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, if you have an actual hardware preamp control, for most setups, you want to do it at the first gain stage, as Tucker said before. First gain stage, do your adjustments there. But if you have dynamics processing in your chain, that's where it would vary. It depends where you want to. Do you want to boost before compression and essentially hit the compressor a bit harder, or do you want to boost after the compression? So simple chains, first gain stage. More complex change, it depends.
Yep, that's great, Jeffrey.
Yeah, no, for me, lots of volume, because back and forth on each day, because we've already gone through a lot of the things, but also just hearing things that you don't hear in Zoom, in your own type of tuning, like Mickey will say, oh, you're a little bit crunchy, or you're a little bit thin, and then you can really gauge the microphone that you're using, and if you want to use it in a more production setting.
Real quick, Guy, then John, then Bill, but let's go quickly through it.
Yeah, just real fast. It's for me is number 3 is the XLR. So it's this little tiny knob on the mix pre, and also gain is the bigger one. So that's a knob on the side that I can't get to, but that's the one that I'm usually turning just a skosh or a pinch or a twist or a half turn, whatever he wants.
John and then Bill.
Yeah, I just use my software on the Atem Mini to adjust the volume. I don't really have another a premix, so that's how I do it.
And Bill, and then move on.
A long time ago, Mackie used to make a thing called the big knob. I never used it, never owned one, and I still don't. But I like the fact that it had one big knob, so that's what I use. I use a Zoom Tac 2 that has a big knob. In fact, that's what it looks like. So I never worry about where my audio adjustment's coming from. I just turn the big knob.
Very good. All right, next question.
All right, moving along to Alex. This is TJ Asher. Alex mentioned that having iStat menus on all his computers is helpful. Do you use the version from the Mac App Store or the version from the iStat menus website? Note they have slightly different functionality depending on which version you purchase.
I use the one from the website because it is not sandboxed in the same way. So you get more functionality from the website version. It's one of the few apps that I buy from the website version. Almost everything else that's under $50 I will not buy unless it's in the App Store, because I just don't want to deal with upgrades. I don't want to, when I go to a new computer or update or whatever, I just want to be able to turn everything on and just install everything that I'm using. And so if it's under $50 and it's not in the App Store, I won't buy it except for iStat menu. Go ahead, Jason.
No, your answer was perfect. That it is one of the very few exceptions for me too.
Yep. Next question.
Moving along, Eric Hall from Mount Vernon says, what's a fast video clip editor on a Mac for Zoom meetings to cut tops and tails? Note, Zoom cloud recordings?
Jason and then George.
So first things first, pull it down, and I'm going to assume you don't want to do the editing in the cloud because I just generally don't like that. There's an app called Permute that will allow you to transcode very quickly and into anything. From there, you could use QuickTime if you wanted to just chop the head and the tail, and that'll be easy.
Go ahead, George, and then Mickey.
So I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but I'm going to put it in the chat. It's SOLVEIMMM video splitter. So we use this extensively on shows where we have to do a ton of records, like 100, 200 per day. It's just top and tail without re-encoding the video, but I'll put it in the chat.
And what we use what I use to do that without re-encoding the video is Switch. So Switch is a telestream software, and it is basically as close to the old QuickTime 7 as you can get, without being QuickTime 7, which is amazing. Anyway, but not that I'm bitter. That Switch is the one that, but I haven't used Permute, so I'm definitely going to check that out as well. Let's see here. So we'll definitely check that out. Next question.
James Babbitt, my neighbor here in San Diego, says, "Hi, Alex. Did you 3D print your portable teleprompter project?"
I haven't printed a new one recently. We printed lots of those 5 years ago because we were sending them all out. I don't know where the design is, so I have to go back into. I have to go and model it again. So it'll take a little time. Hansen may have it. Kevin Hansen may have it, and so we have two Kevins that work for us, so that we just think of them as Hansen and Maurer, because otherwise it gets confusing on comms. And so, but Kevin Hansen may have it, and we'll see if we can dig it up from the grave and print them out. The big problem with printing those was that they didn't, because it's a large flat surface, it tends to curl. And so, what our plan was is to machine them. I mean, they worked, but it was a really pain to print them. And so we want to put them into a CNC and machine them out of aluminum is really the way to do that. Anyway, so we'll I'll see if I can find it. We'll post it if I can find it, because it's a pretty simple little piece of plastic. Next question.
Dirk Brewer in Guatemala says, "With the proliferation of screen scraping, how can one use a non-invading watermark to avoid cloning of your video productions? I've seen some dust flakes fly around on CNN advertisement that I imagine is for digital rights purposes."
Go ahead, Jason.
Easiest possible way, like the one that you're seeing. It's actually easier if you see it with my arm in front of it. But the easiest possible way is with whatever your last switcher or thing is before your encoder, is just use a downstream keyer.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, you just have to figure out. I mean, I have the tendency. I've been doing this for a long time, and I admit that I don't try to hang on to my content that much. I want it to be good right now, and I don't worry about from my content perspective. I think that it's usually with MacBreak and all the other things that we did, MacBreak Video, and we actually put those under Creative Commons licenses, specifically because I felt like it just let it spread the word, because I'm still in it. So it doesn't matter whether it gets copied or not. Go ahead, Jason.
I've just as an aside, can anyone think, I can't imagine a reason why you wouldn't make a podcast Creative Commons. All of my work always has been. It seems like a fool's errand to try to do anything else.
I think that the big thing is that it's obviously a lot of this wraps around advertising and revenue. I just don't think that. I think that we're about to move into a post advertising world over the next decade, and so the content itself is not going to be as valuable as the community that it sits inside of, and I feel pretty strongly about that. Courtney and then Chris.
Yeah, I think is what he's asking for is like what the majors use for steganography to protect their prints and things that high value or pay-per-view streams or something like that, right, where you want to prevent copying, and it has to be able to survive multiple generations of copying. And there are products, but they're quite expensive out there, that will do steganography or watermarking or other means of protecting the content so that you can know where it came from. But most of them have a problem that like theatrical distribution has, where there'll be 50 or 5,000 or 6,000 prints. They want to know what theater the movie was copied from. So each copy of the print that goes out has to have a different watermark, invisible watermark embedded. So that can get quite expensive if that's what you're talking about.
I mean, digital distribution, corporations, and I think even Frame.io has it now, where it'll embed. I think Frame.io, there's a version of it at least that will let you embed the user's name, into the video, so that if you're watching it, if that person copied it, it wouldn't be nearly as useful for them. But it means you don't have to make a whole bunch of copies. You make one copy and put it up. People have to log in, and then their name's in there. And a lot of corporations that we work with, the big corporations, have their own internal systems that will do that, where your name is kind of moving around the video, so that if you were going to copy it out, you would expose yourself. Go ahead, Chris.
This is a little bit of a non sequitur, but I remember years ago on Leo's show, talking about podcasts and stuff. You made a comment about, I think you said, anything that has a magazine on a magazine stand could be a podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember saying that.
Yeah, I do.
What's interesting
I said it event after event.
The magazine stands are gone now, and everything has been replaced with a podcast.
Well, and the interesting thing is that what the argument back then, because I was making that argument not podcasts, but content. I was making that argument in the early 2000s with the magazines, because for some reason I was in a lot of meetings with publishers, and I just kept on saying, this isn't going to last. Like, you're not going to last. And what you need to do is you need to take your viewership right now and move it to the next generation, and figure out how you get everybody's emails, and figure out how you get all the contacts, and how you build a community around that stuff once you lose the pipe, you can't fill it back. You can't fill the pot back up again. so that was but definitely, as I look at magazines, I just looked at people just want to have that ongoing content. We're going to move on because we got a bunch of questions and we're going to run out of time. Next question.
Victor from the panel in Brookings, South Dakota says, so you all saw the camera angles I'm using on the Sax Jam. What would you recommend I change camera angle wise?
Go ahead, TJ.
One thing I would like to see is a wide angle shot where we could see the whole saxophone top to bottom and all the finger action going on there.
Yep. I would have a lot more shots. I would just cut a lot more often, to different things. I'm just used to, and then I would think about places where, especially if you can practice it, where you're going to have your hands somewhere, like close-ups of your fingers, so there's a wide shot of you playing, but there's like close-ups of your fingers, and then there's a couple different angles there. But I think that, I would move more frequently around. Go ahead, Guy. And then Mickey,
I would say look at getting something like the second shooter, which is the dolly or the slider that does automatic moves, and especially if you can get one with curved track and kind of cruise it around. So that's one.
That'd be hot.
His wife's probably going, Guy.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. That'd be a good addition. That's a Red Rock second, or is it Cameron? Mickey, and then we're gonna move on. We're kind of trying to cruise through some of these.
I'm not too fond of the fact like your main frontal shot, you see this nice clean background, but once you go to the side shots, you see the edge of the backdrop, and you see the stands that are holding them up. If that's the case, I'd rather not have a backdrop and have just your actual surroundings there, and not see break the illusion by showing the stands that are holding.
Yeah, the gray screen works really well with close-ups and one straight shot. As soon as you start showing it, it's yeah, exactly. Chris, real quick, and then we'll move on.
I would totally rather see the lab. I totally agree on that. And the other thought I had, Victor, which may be fun, go out, take nature shots of the beautiful state that you live in, and during those long solos, just cue lab in a little B-roll. Rivers,
karaoke
mountains,
style.
Snow, spring,
Mickey.
What'd you say, Mickey? I'm sorry.
Said karaoke style. Yeah. But I think some fun imagery there would be fun. Yeah. Next question. We're gonna keep moving.
Dave Guzman in San Jose says, I was watching the Mandalorian behind the scenes stuff and was blown away by the previs they had made for each episode. Full animation, complete dialogue, and even Favreau playing one of the parts. What were they using to create those animations?
I think right now they're using Maya. If I remember correctly, they've kind of a mixture of Maya and Motion Builder. Those are the two popular ones. When I was doing it, we were using Electric Image for episode 1, and we did the same thing. Pretty much not every shot, but I think in this case they're doing every shot. For us, we were doing every shot that was action. So pod race, space battle, end battle is what I worked on. So we didn't do previs for everything, but we definitely did that. And so Electric Image and After Effects and Forms EU, those were what I worked on. But that team moved mostly to Maya, I think, later on, and then that kind of just kept on going. And so if I'm correct, they're doing that. A lot of it is they're starting to experiment heavily in Unreal. And so I wouldn't be surprised, especially since they're already using Unreal for the Mandalorian itself. I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't pumping some of this stuff in. But Unreal doesn't really have animation tools, so you're going to pick either Maya or Motion Builder. Motion Builder because you can pump motion capture in really easily, and it's got a real-time renderer, so you can do it in real time. We've done ones where we literally previs. We've had ones where we have it was a Skype call back then. The director is looking at the 3D actors who are people in motion capture suits, listening to the director. But it was really funny just watching these little 3D characters like looking at the director as he says, "Oh, I want a little bit more of this," and they're like nodding and everything else because you're getting a real time render of that, and that was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So technology's been around for a while. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, the real benefit of Unreal is that I would assume the motion control it's going to pipe in all of the metadata, and then it's going to show it to you instead of having to see a bunch of numbers output, on a time code.
Yeah, for previs, I don't think Unreal is that advantageous because when we're not trying to do full level textures and everything else, there's a lot of apps that do that. Again, Motion Builder's been doing that for 15 years.
That they were talking
but
about.
Even then, yeah, but you do want to use, one of the reasons they went to Maya was because the final shots were being generated there. And so they wanted to make sure that they would tie together, and like in the Tuscan turn, so when they go around the curve in episode 1 in the thing, I found it easier to animate the previs by just twisting the turn. So I had the little guys are going like this, and the camera would go like this against them, and then I would just I had a null in the center, and I would just turn the Tuscan turn around. Well, that's great, but at ILM they needed to animate them actually moving around the curve, and they couldn't take any of my motion data because I had done it completely another way. Anyway, next question.
John Pruitt of Huntersville says, yesterday Zoom wouldn't show video from the Atem Mini. No troubleshooting I did worked until I restarted the MacBook Pro. Is this a common thing that happens?
So I am seeing a variety of issues with USB 3 and Zoom, and I can't quite put my finger on it. So if I connect my Scorpio or my USB or my Mix Pre, and I use multiple connections. I connect to WebEx, I connect to a couple other things. When I come back to Zoom just goes into this horrible start cycle. And it's happened with my Atem Mini as well. And so I suspect that there's something going on with USB 3 because I don't have it with anything else. It's just USB 3, but it seems to be across different pieces of hardware. Since no one else is raising their hand, go ahead, John.
I was just going to clarify what I, did to troubleshoot is I restarted Zoom.
Yep. Restarting the computer has fixed it every single time. It's that there's something else that requests it, and USB 3 doesn't let it go. And there's something there's something there, and I can't define it yet, but there's something there when it's just not letting go of the hook, and then Zoom can't get it until you restart the computer, then it's fine.
I think it might be WebEx because I did a WebEx just before I started having the problem.
I think it is WebEx because WebEx is evil. Guy, and then we're gonna move on.
Just wanted to ask, did you try unplugging and plugging back in the A10 as well? Okay,
yep.
Because that's if you did already. The thing sometimes overheats. These little legs that like Courtney have made and other people have bought helps with airflow, and I've noticed that keeps it from going to a black screen.
I power cycled it, and I was getting a output to my monitor. I wasn't getting an output to that, and other programs could see the video. It was just Zoom.
Yep, there's something about Zoom and USB 3 that I'm seeing with USB 3 only that I haven't quite gotten a hold of yet. No, next question.
James in Dublin says, if Alex gets up at 3:30 a.m., what time does he go to bed? I've always known Americans rise early. 6:30 would not be an unusual bedtime for me anyway. That's probably 3:30 in the morning.
I go to bed about 9:30, 9:30 to 10, somewhere in that range. It's about 5.5, 6 hours is enough. So, but that's about my schedule. Go ahead, Stuart, and then we'll move on.
You go to bed before all the good restaurants in Melbourne open.
I know. I've been there. When I was in Melbourne, I definitely went to bed later because I was out late eating. So I had a lot of
for anyone finishing a show, the Waiters restaurant up in the top end of Melbourne is meant for people who are working late. It's brilliant food.
That's great. Next question.
James Babbitt in San Diego down here says, hi, Alex. What are some of the movies on the list of movies that you use for teaching?
I promised to put that up in Discord, and I haven't done that yet. I have to, but I mean, some of the big ones are the Criterion release for Traffic, Matrix, the original Matrix, the box set for the Lord of the Rings. There is a couple other Criterion ones that are good. That are good. These are old DVDs. I don't know what and but. I have to look at a couple more of them, but those are the ones that popped off the top of my head. But I'll try to make a larger list. I haven't had to do film analysis for a while, so I don't have them as often as I used to. Next question.
Another one from James in San Diego. You mentioned seeing Tiny World on Apple TV Plus. Any comment on how they are tracking the elephant shrew running on her trail?
I'm gonna put a pin in that one because I want to talk about that one in the education hour because there's a lot to that. So anyway, let's just keep that one around. We'll put it back. Cancel back. Okay, go ahead. Next question.
I was trying to get it over there. We had a few in here. I think it's Craig Hibbert. Is there anyone using office hours ideas and methods to improve political debates?
Not in this country.
Not that we've seen so far.
We need to have a mute switch for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's yeah, I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to touch that one. So anyway, but yeah, no, I haven't seen any. I do think that. I think that debates could be really powerful as a public discourse over ideas. I don't think we're in currently, at least in the United States, we're in a state that could actually achieve that. So I think that's the challenge. Sky and then John real quick, and then we'll move on.
I worked in an 08 and 2010 on the elections, and to realize it was just a junior high publicity concept. I think we're doing more good here in affecting the ground up than whatever that popularity contest is that we're being told that Viagra is the best thing ever.
Yeah, go ahead, John, real quick, and then
the other John. Office hours are completely open. I had a fly attend office hours 2 days ago.
John Pruitt.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the difference between office hours and political debates is that you have people genuinely trying to help each other out and not shout over each other and win at all cost. And
I was asked to design this and design these one time like as a theoretical process. And my whole thing is that I thought that what you should do is have 10 debates that are happening during the spring, not during the whatever. And you should have, you should have multiple voting, in my opinion, like we just whittle, basically Final Four type, where you have 10 and then the top 8 or the top, or no, like, and everyone votes on them online. And then we get down to like 4 or even 2 that we actually vote for in the primary. But my thought is that you spend a week and say, we're going to talk about education this week. That's all we're going to talk about is education. And then we spend a week with experts and the news, and you drive a national conversation about education, and then healthcare, and then foreign policy, and then whatever. But it cues the everyone building content would build it around that idea for that week, and then it would, and then they'd all talk about it, and then they, in hopefully a more focused manner of that one thing. And then we all vote and get rid of some of them. So anyway, Stuart, real quick, and then we'll move on.
The problem is most politicians worldwide, doesn't matter where they are, don't have the common decency and manners that this panel does. Secondly, I would love to see elections by dodgeball.
I think.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think
Oh
that'd be
yeah.
great. A lot of politicians do. It's just that the way our system is set up, it makes it difficult to have those. I mean, I've worked with a lot of politicians, and there a lot of people are. I mean, I just want to make sure we're clear that on both sides of the aisle, there's a lot of politicians that are just great people. You know, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of them. You know, face to face and work through them and everything else. And the current structure and the way we cover them and everything else is really ugly. You know, and it pushes them to say stuff, and you know, not everyone says the same thing all the time. But there's a lot of good people on both sides, you know, and again, it's just the way we have it set up is painful. Anyway, next question.
I believe it's George Notre-Ville, but I might be completely wrong about that. And if so, George, I apologize. Sorry for the basic question, but what is the audio level meter thing that Mickey uses? What's the signal path that he listens to?
Mickey?
Hey, so yeah, let me just spotlight that. The plugin is called Waves Loudness Meter, and it's by Waves. And the signal path is I just use Audio Hijack to get the Zoom signal into the what do you call this, the meter, the plugin.
Yep, that's great. That's great. Next question.
Curtis Scott, we just got our Atem Mini Pro and we're trying to use the upstream key for our graphic. The image was exported to PNG. Is there a better way?
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Use the Photoshop plugin that was automatically installed. That's an extremely easy way to do it. And I hate to be a broken record. If you read the manual, it is insanely easy to follow. Just start with that.
So if you don't have Photoshop, Affinity Photo, you can export a TGA with a pre-multiplying the alpha channel to the RGB, and it'll go out well. And I know that it works because I'm the one that made the request. They give me a cheaper version than Photoshop so that I could export it from Affinity Photo. So Affinity Photo's TGA export works. So you can build graphics there for $30 or $50 or whatever they have, and export them out as TGA. But you have to make sure that you pre-multiply the alpha channel. In fact, I think if you're over, I think they got it right in Affinity. If you're over transparency, they'll automatically pre-multiply the alpha for you. But that's a great little tool for you to export out of. Next question.
Ashadav in New York City says, what do folks here think of the new Oculus Quest 2? Will this finally push VR more mainstream? Thoughts on the future of VR beyond games?
Go ahead, Jason.
I think the thing that will push VR mainstream will actually be content related at this point. I think it will be the LiDAR in our iOS devices. I think it'll be photogrammetry. It won't actually be experiential, at least not to begin with, because it's been such a saturated market. I wouldn't say from the get-go, but it's becoming an extremely saturated market. And I feel like people will want to create things and then they'll want to experience them, because if the inverse was the case, it would have happened by now.
There are some killer apps that I've seen. I mean, there's moments, I guess what I would say, and we're going to kind of transition over here, and we're going to sing Victor a song here in a second. But the thing that I would say about it is that there are killer apps. Like Robo Recall is a killer app, you know, that's in the system. I put a lot of hours into Robo Recall. I think that it showed you what you could do as a first-person shooter, for instance, that was really interesting as far as getting through there. There's things about Google's Expeditions that I thought was pretty amazing, that you put it on and suddenly you were somewhere else. I mean, even in its rough form. So there's places, there's these hints of where VR could be that I think we keep on seeing. It's just not there yet. I don't think it's going to push. I don't think Oculus, it's going to push it into the mainstream. I still think that many of us, if you look at how many of us here wear glasses, that's a huge issue. Like, because they're just a pain in the neck, and they won't fix it. There's a little diopter that was on the original Gear that Samsung put out, and for some reason Oculus won't put it on there, and I just won't use them anymore. Like, I just stopped. I just gave up. I was like, until I get a diopter that I can adjust, I'm not going to play at all, you know, unless someone pays me to do it, you know. And so I think that has been a big. I mean, you know, half of our panel has got glasses on, and for all of us, you know, it's painful to use. And that's the problem, is about half the population, especially the ones that would be interested in their product, have to deal with that problem. And I don't think that Oculus understands how many people they're cutting out that would potentially be using their product. So anyway, I think that's going to continue to be a big issue for them. Anyway, but I think that, it's getting the right app that everyone has to be in part of, or it has to be enough of them to make it worth it. There's, HTC has a couple of really cool ones, and, there's the little one where you shoot the arrows is slick. Go ahead, Stuart.
I'm going to be brutal about VR because, I love high-tech stuff, but the whole time, it doesn't matter whether we're wearing glasses or not, the goggles are a pain. And until LED walls replace TVs, VR is just not going to happen. It's going to need that sort of technology break where something that is a wall-sized display becomes cheap, that everybody can get it, then it might take off.
Right. So now I think I'm still going. Yeah, there we go. So we're gonna jump in. We're gonna try this new idea that I had around birthday, wishing people happy birthday here. So let's see if I have. See if this comes up. Let me make sure you can see it. There we go. See that? See. So the idea is that I'm going to kind of prep you all, because this is like every time someone has a birthday, in the panel we have an opportunity to play with this idea, which is that we sing the song, and the idea is that we can't sync up because we can't sync up because we're all trying to follow me, and then they're all different things. So if I put up the text and you follow it as I put up the text, I think it'll keep us more in sync. Now, it's not going to keep us in key. That's still going to be a disaster. But we'll work on that next. But so what we're going to try to do is we might try to do it twice just to see if we can figure it out. We'll just try to do it before we get to the whole thing. Everyone try to sing it as you see the text. Okay.
I see no text.
No, you're going to see it. You're going to see it in a second.
Should everyone pin you?
You have to be pinned, Alex.
Yeah.
You can pin me.
Not spotlighted, but everyone should pin Alex.
Okay. Because you can still see it otherwise. You can see it, right? You see it there, right? No matter, regardless.
I see it.
All right.
I see it in gallery.
Yeah, your name covers on the gallery.
Yeah. All right. So everyone just try. We'll just try just the first little bit before we get to Victor. All right. Ready?
We turn down our audio so we're not hearing anyone out of sync.
And
just go on. Gut
I'm going to be out of sync regardless. I'm on the other side of the planet.
Yeah. We'll just see what happens. Okay. Ready, and
unmute.
Happy birthday to you.
Cha-cha-cha.
Happy birthday to you.
Okay. I think we're getting closer. I think that's the best we've done so far. All right. So again, we need more women in the thing. If we need to get some of that.
What we need is follow the bouncing ball. Really.
I know. Well, that's it. Yeah. Well, we'll work on that. So go ahead, TJ.
We just need something to set the tempo. The first time you did it, you let us all in at here's the tempo, and then everybody followed.
No. The bouncing ball's next. We just have to I'm just trying to see if this would actually work, and that's a test.
Alex,
it was pretty good.
Alex, you could just use your finger if you can see the.
No, because it'll.
No, the Andersons had a candle going down there. They were doing.
This is the first
bouncing candle.
This is just the first iteration, so we'll make it better. Before you know, it'll be animated and things will go crazy. All right, okay, everyone ready? Okay, here we go.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Victor.
Cha-cha.
Happy birthday to you. That was not as good. It was good on the practice, but it fell apart in production.
No, but it is still the best one ever. It was still considerably better than the last one that we did. The hard part for me, I realized, is that I have to not listen to you guys because I have to stay with I have to do it in my head. Otherwise, I was dragging you guys out too long. So It does need to be a little movie that plays with a little dot, so we'll work on that.
I have a few different thoughts on that, so we should get online separate off of that to work on that.
And now I finally have my drunk tone for my phone. That will be going on my phone. Have you had a little too much to drink? Thank you, guys. That was so nice of you.
Hey, how's the party going?
Victor, you live long enough to hear us get it right.
Yeah.
We need a tempo run in, and we definitely need a key. Somebody has to do a pitch pipe.
Yes, that's the key of L.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah. No, that's. I think we can put that into the movie. So we'll work on who's next. Who's the next birthday? Who's got one coming up? Who's the next victim that's in here?
Like they're going to admit it now.
Any more this month? I have to look at Facebook now. All right.
I'm in November.
When in November? When in November?
Middle, like the 13th.
Anyone before November 13th?
Like the 13th or the 13th?
John.
Wait. Who's the 11th? Oh,
John.
okay. So John and Jason. We're going to get to practice a couple times in November. Okay, excellent. All right. We are now. If you are an educator and you want to join the panel, raise your hand.
And be relieved you got in after that.
They were all, I'm here, but I'm not raising my hand until they're done with this craziness, this insanity.
Can you demote me?
Yeah, I can. Hold on, let's see. Oh, sorry. Everything's moving so fast. There we go. Just gonna stay out of it. Anyone else? Last chance for educators to raise their hand. I know that Chris isn't feeling well today, so he already sent me an email and said he wasn't going to make it. Hopefully Chris will be back next week.
Mickey, I'm going to follow Courtney's lead and slip out of the way to make more room for panelists on education. Enjoy the rest of the show, guys.
Copy that.
And Mickey, can you go ahead and do a quick mic check with everybody there?
Yeah, sure thing. All right.
Okay, great.
Hey guys, let me just put the meters up in view here. All right. Hey guys, just as usual, our goal is at -20 on the mic check. Let's start off with Michael Ball.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I joined just in time to attempt to do a really bad singing job, but that was fun.
Alrighty, maybe just a dB down from you, Michael.
dB down, all right.
Yep.
Just pulled it down a slight bit.
All right, thank you very much, Aaron, and then Bruce Francis afterwards.
Good morning, Erin from Boston. Having a couple of weeks of remote learning, and so far it's going pretty well. So hopefully that trend continues and the kids keep enjoying. And we had a lovely discussion about tea this week, so kind of ties into the coffee thing on Discord. So kind of made me laugh when I saw it.
That's a good check. Thank you very much, Bruce, and then Tony.
Okay, good morning from Naples, Florida. I'm looking at everybody on the screen here, and I think I need some work on my lighting. I better get my son and call him again to get him to give me some. I think I seem to be, can anybody tell me how to get less, I don't know what I want to call it, flashy white here?
Bruce,
How's
that's
that sound
often when your computer screen is adding to whatever light you have on you. Sometimes there's just a computer reflecting off of you.
Yeah, it's very blue light off the computer.
So should I shut the computer off? I guess that might work. Huh?
You can dim it, or sometimes computers these days, the OS has dark mode. That really helps.
Ah, great. Okay, thank you.
Or you can also put it into nighttime mode. If you're on a Mac, they also can go really warm at night, so you could turn that on too.
Okay, how's the sound? Is it working okay?
Bruce, are you hearing us through open speakers, or is it going into your headphones?
It's going into my headphones, which I now have plugged into a USB-C port instead of into the usual audio port.
Okay.
Maybe I should change that. Is it better or it's okay?
Level wise, you're coming in okay. I think I just heard a blip of like bleed through open speakers, but yeah, you're coming in. Excuse me, coming in good. Tony, and then Stevie afterwards. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is it roomy? Do I need to put my earbuds in?
I think it's okay. You just need. I think you need to come down on your microphone level a bit.
Okay. Is that too much?
Yeah, I think that's a bit too much. Go 1/3 of the way down on that change you did.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Another bump up, and I think you should be good.
Okay.
Give us a quick test, Tony, after you do the bump and level.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
That last change that you did, split the difference. Go in the middle of that last change.
Okay.
That's a huge jump we got there.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I think you're around in the area. Stevie?
All right. Hoping you guys can hear me fine on your side. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I was able to jump in on that song. My daughter's birthday is actually, yes, it was yesterday. So she's driving around a baby shark in the background. So if you happen to see her pop in, that's why.
It's not fair. You got to rehearse.
Right. Stevie, I've just been noticing something the past few weeks. Like, do you mean to come? Because like right now to us, you're looking mirrored. So like that poster in the background reads Marvel like the other way around. So I don't know what camera are you coming on? What are you using?
I actually switched up with a Connect camera here that on my side it's showing the regular way. Maybe I flip it in.
Did you turn off mirroring in Zoom?
That's what I'm going to check right now.
Because I think when you turn off mirroring in Zoom, it actually flips it for everybody else. So it's backwards for everybody.
Flipped it for me, and then I guess it's good for you guys now?
Hold on, let's see here.
No.
It's backwards still.
Still backwards.
It's backwards still. What camera is this again?
I'm using the new Connect camera to get a little bit more wider view.
Anyway, not a big deal. You're coming in loud and clear. It just irks me to see like Marvel and Star Wars like.
It hurts him inside. All right, let's. Bill, you ready to go? Let's go to the next first question.
Sure. Michael Russo's in with the first one that was EDU. By the way, Alex, there were a couple still left in the highlighted bin, so I don't know whether you want me to bring those over or not. Michael's question is, Google Meet's integration into Google Classroom makes an easy way for teachers to connect to students. Are there any software or extensions that improve audio video beyond what is available in the Meet settings? Looking for scalable ideas, hopefully that don't add hardware.
I mean, if you're using webcams, there's of course there are things like webcam settings, will definitely improve. Having webcam settings is useful. It's a $7 app on the Mac at least that's going to let you do color correction to your webcam, and possibly, depending on your webcam itself, you can zoom in, zoom out if there's enough data there. Go ahead, Jason.
Firefox and Chrome, assuming you're coming in not using the Meet app, it has a setting if you go deeply into it in About Config that is one tab per process, and that'll actually isolate in your processor. So if you start getting crashy or a resource hog, or one of the other web pages that's opened is like taking too many resources, you can quit that or force quit that without force quitting the whole thing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I was going to say on audio front, of course, there's audio hijack. I wouldn't necessarily put that in the scalable solution. It's not terribly complicated. Also because it costs money, but just if you haven't used it, audio hijack lets you insert processing in your mic on your audio feed live. So you could use that if you didn't want to buy, a separate audio interface or a pile or whatever else you have access to.
Right. Very good. Next question.
Stevie Kraft is in with recommendations for long-range wireless mics with USB base stations for teaching on the move.
The thing that we'll constantly tell you is just really think carefully about any wireless system under $500. You especially when you say long range. I've definitely been successful at short range, 30 feet or less, without a lot of other wireless. But you just need to know you're going to have trouble. And again, in an education environment where there's 15 people watching or 20 people watching or 50 people watching and they understand that you're doing the best that you can, I think about it from a broadcast perspective of, I'm going to have breakup and everything else. But just know that you will have breakup. There's going to be issues on cheaper transmission because they're using more publicly available frequencies. They're not as powerful. The build isn't going to be as good, and your wireless is not always going to work. We've seen people in the most basic form using their AirPods can go a solid 30 feet, very solid 30 feet. I've walked, 50 feet away from my car and forgotten my phone was in there, and suddenly these people drop out. But I'm amazed. I'm always amazed that I got this far without even noticing. And so it can, it's not that you can't do it. You just need to think about, that's probably the cheapest way to do that. But go ahead, Jason.
I would say that, well, first, I would kind of ask Stevie if he has a budget in mind. You can get third-party, if we're just going to constrain to like USB and Bluetooth, you can get third-party antennas that are high-gain antennas that will increase your range somewhat, but, not really, because, of course, it's a transceiver, and we're still talking about, the transmission going back to it.
And Stevie, what are you trying to do?
Yeah, so what we're looking at is some of our teachers are obviously now having to teach both online and in person. So as they're moving around in the room there, some of the computers that we have do not have, they're older models, so they don't have Bluetooth hookup. So I'm kind of thinking of something where we have like a small antenna on the desk that will, link in via YouTube, USB into the computer, and then they could walk around the room and talk to the students in both spaces.
And the other thing to remember is that you can have something that's a receiver that has an analog out, and then you just need a USB. You need to convert that analog back to USB. So you might be limiting yourself if you're only looking for something that's going to handle USB. You might limit yourself where if it has an analog out, then you just need something that's going to take analog in. It could even be a headphone jack. So it could be a $15 converter from whatever you have there to make that work. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Michael.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. Off the top of my head, I don't know of a solution that would be like a wireless mic that directly has a USB receiver. Typically, you would have like a separate wireless microphone system that goes into an audio interface, like as Alex just mentioned.
Yeah, Michael, and then Jason.
Yeah, I was going to suggest the same thing of using, a regular wireless mic. And in terms of potentially, reasonable price solutions that work all right, I've used a Pyle one, Pyle, the same makers of the headset that's been recommended, and Boya, who also makes some pretty affordable replica products. And you can find decent ones for $30 to $80. And they just have a 3.5 millimeter out on the other end that you could probably plug directly in or get a tiny interface.
Yeah, but Jason?
Yeah, and I'll add to the tech part of that. Monoprice both Monoprice and Amazon Basics have fairly robust long-range Bluetooth-based setups along those lines. Just keep in mind, sync is always going to be an issue when you start doing stuff that is, disconnected from your camera. My guess is in a teaching environment, it matters more that, the teacher is free than are they perfectly frame synced.
And if you have any budget at all, one that in the inexpensive range, the Rode Go is my brother has been really successful at that with his wife. My sister-in-law is a yoga teacher. And so she's doing her stuff where she's got to do yoga, and she's got a Samson mic and goes into a Rode Go, and she's able to do everything. And it doesn't, it's really small, and they've been really successful at both putting it into an iPad as well as into a computer. Guy, and then Mickey.
Yeah, in addition to the Rode Wireless Go, I'm on some of these teacher forums, and one of the ones that they've been buying is not a wireless. It's actually a wired, and they've just been amplifying their voice. So they've been using these things that are like $35 to just get a mic in front of their face and then blast out, sound through the speaker. So this one, I'll throw it in the chat. It's $35.99, and the teachers just seem to be loving this thing. And I would have never thought of that as a solution, but it's something to look at. Just amplifying your voice so you don't get voice fatigue.
Yeah, go ahead, John. Your sync is perfect.
Yeah, sync is perfect. Yeah, a number of in our teacher prep program have been using that because the amplification in the classroom is helpful because there's lots of noise in classrooms. So having that microphone and then boosting the volume has been very successful in some of our California schools.
Go ahead, Stevie.
Just kind of a follow-up to that too. Would any of these options also give the teacher the ability to hear what's going on their end, or is this just microphone settings that we're looking at right now? Because some of our teachers want to be able to hear.
And the thing to think about there again is whether you can have the teacher use their iPhone, if they have an iPhone, use it, and remember it's 30 feet from wherever the phone's sitting. So you can set it down, you can walk, you could, for instance, one thing to think about is, this will sound a little goofy and the sync will be way off, but you could join via the phone twice, right? And then you put the phone in your pocket, you just walk around and you're talking to the students, and they're hearing, they may see you from one wide shot or whatever there, but you're hearing them from another participant. You just mute the video and only show the audio, mute the, and so you just have two different connections. And that is probably the easiest way to do it, is just because everyone's got a phone, and it's just joined twice. You just got to be careful of how you join so you don't get echo. Jason, Michael, and Roscoe.
Alex is definitely the cheapest way that I can think to do it too. If you're willing to spend some decent money, I got this on B&H. These are usually $700-800, but every now and again they go on sale. This was $200 2 weeks ago. And it's basically it's designed as a lav, but it also has a headphone out, so you can monitor with these. And if you use it backwards, $200 is incredibly cheap. It's much cheaper than your standard Sennheiser body pack.
Yeah.
Once you get into the $200 range, you're really talking about Boya, Saramonic, Rode. Like, I think those are like, as well as the Sony ones, but those are all three brands that are. Saramonic is just chewing up the asphalt in front of them. I mean, it's kind of they were like a little converter box for us, 5 years ago, and now you see them at NAB and they've got this massive booth of all these components that they do, and it's not the highest quality, but generally it is very solid for what you're paying. Bill?
I just wanted to put in a word of warning. The FCC occasionally sells off spectrum, so you get radio mics like these that you show up all over the newspapers going out cheap, and that may be because they've transferred that spectrum into something else, and it may be a problem later. So at least be aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, if you see them in eBay, you won't see them at most other places because a lot of them get bought up. I guess Shure and everybody else tries to buy them up because they actually don't want them to end up overseas. They don't want to crash their markets, and so a lot of times they try to buy them up as fast as they can. Michael?
Yeah, on the Saramonic recommendation, you might be able to find it cheaper elsewhere, but I'm pretty sure, I haven't looked super recently, but they do have an education discount, which is always something to be aware of. On the phone trick, which I do think is probably one of the easier solutions, you just need to make sure that with students, you tell them how highlight speaker will work, because if they have that on, then it might highlight the video of or the tile of the hidden camera. And so if they're relying on Zoom auto switching whenever you have two devices, that's something to just let students know. But other than that, if you use a spotlight your real camera feature or whatever you want them to see, then you should be fine there.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Are we on Zoom, Stevie? Is that?
Actually, no, we're using Teams.
Yeah, I'm not sure the iPhone trick works on Teams the way it does on Zoom.
I know that when I'm presenting, I can use my Teams application to, like what you guys are saying. When you said it, just clicked to me. Yeah, I can do that as well. I can throw the Teams app on my phone, drop it in my pocket, use the Bluetooth headset for my phone, and then just spotlight myself as a second presenter.
Good. Okay. And then the other thing, of course, is to understand that if you're in a limited bandwidth situation, the phone will eat up bandwidth. So.
Next question.
Raul Santos of New York says, what's a good run of show solution, Mac, Windows, Web?
Most popular in the industry is a very obscure app called Google Docs. It is by far the most used run of show solution. It's Sheets specifically is how and what we'll try to do is I have to clean some up so I can show you what they are and make it like Acme something. I have lots of run of shows, but they're all things I can't show you. But spreadsheets have been, and there's great ones out there. There's Rundown Creator is a great one that's there that we've used. But the lingua franca of run of shows is Google Docs. Go ahead, Sky.
Planning Center is another one that we use at our church. And
the hard part is you can get it if you have a small group. If you're constantly building new teams and putting them together, you can build anything up into it. But if you're constantly changing them, trying to retrain everybody to use some new vertical that you want to use for this show is hard. Whereas everybody's been using Excel for the, or Sheets or something for the last 15 years. And so they just understand the structure, and so that's been the challenge that we've had with it is getting, if I had the same team all the time, I'd probably pick one of the other Rundown Creator or there's another Show Flow. Those are the two ones that I would, those are the two big ones that we've seen, but I would have to have it be my team all the time because otherwise you just have a bunch of people that are confused. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, yes, and Planning Center is a suite of tools, of transfer, of calendaring, of responsibility, grouping. So it's a little more robust than just a spreadsheet, but it's got the functionality of a spreadsheet as well. So you can print out this happens, swap it around.
There's big advantages like Rundown Creator. One of the big advantages tells you how much time is left. So you have TRT for the whole show as you're building it out. Like this is going to be this much. The problem is that the way I view online events is I don't need to hit those times exactly. So I'm just kind of like, we have a thing and it's going to go until we're tired of talking about it. And then we have another thing that's going to go until we're tired of talking about it. And so once you add, the big unknown is once you add interactivity, and it's really hard to work with event folks and to understand that once you add interactivity, the timeline goes off the rails and it doesn't matter. It doesn't, like we hold a certain timeline, like we try to hit, we might go heavy a couple minutes, but we try to hit the top of the hour, just because it gives people some, but we're all interactivity, and we do it every day. But I think that when you're doing an event, having some flexibility in that process makes a big difference. So that's why we don't care about TRT as much. Next question.
James Babbitt here in San Diego for the education group. How are students and teachers adapting to virtual classes?
Yeah, go ahead, Erin.
So I'm teaching third grade remote this entire year. And the first week or two was a little bit rocky, but then they got into the flow of what we were doing. And it seems to be pretty successful so far. And the parents really seem to enjoy it. I've been getting really good feedback and the kids have been responding well. And now we're starting to do breakout rooms and really trying to differentiate what they're learning and how they're learning. So the project-based learning can now start to roll out and make it more successful.
Right. Michael?
Yeah, I think for higher ed, we're kind of getting into that cycle where I think we're hopefully, things are figured out in terms of flow and technology. For a certain subset of students, it's really working. And then there's a larger than usual group for whom this is really not working still. And I think it's hard to separate right now what is just online education and what is everything else in 2020. And in particular, being at a place like Berkeley, where the political environment also affects students, there's a confluence of like 30 things going on right now, including, fires in California. So, we have, everyone has noticed this semester a much higher than usual level of stress amongst the students and amongst the faculty too, incidentally. But, aside from that, the technology piece, the delivery of content is sort of continuing. But the rest of the experience is definitely a little bit more challenging.
Jason, that's good.
I actually, along those lines, I have a question for the teachers in the group. Have you noticed a higher positive correlation for students with ADHD? As someone who struggled through both degrees, I'm curious how that's been affecting online learning.
Any, go ahead, Stevie, then Aaron. Your sync is great.
I had to type in something up. No, for our students with ADHD and situations like that, I actually found that in certain cases, the students are actually a little bit more engaged in the online space because it's asynchronous in a lot of cases. So they can jump on when they need to, jump off if they need to. There's not the teacher standing over them in that classroom and saying, no, you need to sit back down and get this done. So we're finding for some of our students that it's actually working out well for them in that scenario because there's not as many, borders and boundaries there. But I know it's one thing that we are constantly aware of, that, we're trying to, merge this space. And if there is no teacher interaction there, you have the other group that never comes back. So we're trying to figure out how to do that. It's not synced properly though.
Yeah, Aaron, and then John Idelson.
So I'm finding that with my third graders, it's been working out pretty well with the students who have ADHD or those who are just a little bit more hyper than usual, in the sense that I'll do a 10 to 15 minute mini lesson and then put up a timer, a countdown clock for them and say, I'm here, but you can turn your cameras off, get some work done, pop back if you have questions. So I feel like with the boundaries kind of being a little bit more loosened, I think it's been very helpful for students that can pop in to ask a question, but they have that freedom to do what they need to do and maybe rewatch a video or pop over to a new website to try something new just to build up their skills. So I think it's been pretty helpful for all.
John?
Yeah, back to how are students and faculty doing? This is anecdotal data, but it's of interest. Here on our campus, we have a census date. You are in the class for a couple weeks, and then that's the last time you could drop or add. And they found out that fewer students were dropping than when it was face-to-face. So they're not sure why that is, but that must indicate some acceptance of being online. And again, we have the small faculty support group, and the typical discussions are, one faculty member teaches 3 classes and 2 of them are working great and 1 of them isn't. And I said, well, how does that compare to when you're doing face-to-face? He says, about the same. When I have 3 classes, usually 2 of them are working great and 1 of them doesn't. A group called Inside Higher Ed, it's a online newsletter journal, are beginning to do research studies. And there seems to be a greater acceptance of online learning from faculty surveys than there had been prior to this. So I think we're getting used to this is going to be the new normal.
Yeah. Stevie, and then Bruce, and then Jason, and Guy.
Yeah, to add to that, I was just noticing for us, number one, we got a lot of teachers that are with all the changes. I think that's been the hardest part, where we're not sure if we're going in, we're coming out, how long are we going to be in, how long are we going to be out. So it's really hard to plan and prep and get yourself in the right space. And then to kind of tie into what John is saying as well, it's a culture. It's a different culture online than it is in person. And it takes time to get adapted and used to the setup and used to the spaces and knowing where all my stuff is, knowing where all my expo markers are in the classroom and knowing where all my buttons are on my keyboard. So once we shift around too much, I think that's where most of the frustration and headache, not just for the students, but also for the teachers as well, where they're like, well, should I invest a lot of time in this if we're only going to be doing it for 1 week and then I'm going to go back to class or what? So that's been our struggle.
I think that I come from an event background. I've said this over and over again. It's the being unsure of what you're going to do next is far more damaging than picking the wrong thing. It's just, it's the zigzagging that kills people, and if we just decided we were going to do digital for this school year and we're going to make it all work, it would probably work actually really well. And I think that some people are concerned about that. I've definitely heard comments from both broadcasters and education systems that there's a concern that if we get out of the habit of what we were doing, that we won't want to go back, and that, if all, there's a whole bunch of issues that show up after that. That if we stop watching sports, are we going to come back to it? If we stop watching, if we stop watching TV the way we did, are we going to come back to it? Or we stop learning the same way? If we stop working at, like all these companies are slowly breaking down. Like Microsoft said that the huge chunk of them, I think yesterday or the day before, is going to be they're going to let people stay at home, and we're just going to see that continually unwrap. And so I think that I think people are afraid of letting it go because they just don't know what is on the other side. Bruce, and then Jason, and then Guy.
Yeah, again, my students are very different. They're doctoral students working on their dissertation, and this is in education. A lot of them are administrators. So there's the problems for them is that a lot of them have a lot less time to work on their research because they are having all kinds of meetings now in their schools. So it's interfering in that regard. But on the other hand, a lot of them are also needing to incorporate the whole COVID situation into their research. So it's leading to some very interesting topics, new ideas, and broadening of the whole research thing. So it's kind of a mixed bag as far as it goes for doctoral students.
Good, Jason.
John, as a follow-up, you said there were fewer ad drops. I'm wondering if it's because there's been a change as the result of a relaxing of caps on lectures.
Well, I guess well, go ahead. Go ahead, John.
Go ahead, Alex.
I just wonder if there's less students too. I mean, have a lot of students decided to skip the year?
No, actually, our enrollment numbers have stayed steady. So that's an interesting thing. And I think a lot of the dropping in ads, were students who were shopping for other classes and they might have taken 2 and then do 1. I think the fact that they were more focused on what they picked may be an explanation why there's fewer drop ads. But, this is all things to research.
Yep. Guy, and then Michael.
Yeah, as a parent of a 3rd grader that's fidgety, I can relate with Aaron, and I've been watching kind of behind the scenes of how they're interacting, and it's pretty cool when they go into breakout rooms and the teacher has the ability to see in Google Classroom what's going on, and the student can see when the teacher's watching them. So they're in their own breakout room, and they get excited when they see that little icon light up that the teacher's watching them as they're moving through the stuff. And then they could actually, in the breakout room, they could hit ask for help, and the teacher pops into the breakout room. So it's a neat way to see the teachers managing so many students and then giving to the one-on-one attention to the ones that need it. So we're embracing it. I mean, it's been better than it was at the beginning of the year for sure. And then at the end of the week, like yesterday, I just got this, the summary of what student work was completed and what's due. And so it's pretty neat to actually get this summary at the end of the week as a parent to see what was done and what wasn't done. But pretty cool to see Google Classroom in action and see it working.
Thank goodness. All I can say is thank goodness it's forced my kids' school to get rid of paper. Like I just could, as a parent, I couldn't keep track of what was due and what was there because they just insisted on sending stuff home and with our kids with paper. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, stop this. And it was just like every time I said, they say they haven't turned this in. I'm like, how would I know? And now we have it all digital, and and that's something I hope just sticks around. Like we never go back to that, like sending anything home in paper with the kids. Michael, and then Aaron.
Yeah, not that kind of paper, but just anecdotally, when I would walk into the copy room for the computer science department every week, there would be tens of thousands of pages of discussion worksheets or exam booklets or things. I am glad to see none of that there. In terms of my experience with some of the ad drop stuff, I think the advantage of asynchronous is that you have fewer time conflicts with courses as well, and a lot of us have been proactive about moving around section meeting times so that we have early morning and evening times to accommodate for international students, and we would never have physical classrooms where we could move this around, and so to some extent scheduling's been a little bit easier, and that's helped for students. Anecdotally, I think Berkeley had fewer students drop during the deadline. The courses that had higher drops than other courses turns out to be directly correlated to how well the first few weeks went, and in particular to the strictness of their exam policies. And that, like when I just look through the list and I see, like 0%, 1%, 10 or 20%, it's basically an assessment of the policies of the first few weeks of the semester.
Interesting. Very interesting. Aaron, and then Roscoe.
So to piggyback off what Guy said, there is nothing more my students love than when their documents are open and I pop in and I drop a Bitmoji that says great job or thumbs up or stars. It is like the highlight of their day.
That's great. Interesting. I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have thought of that as being a really good, a really strong positive reinforcement, but it's interesting that it is. I can see it as you say it, as a person that didn't really care about, like I didn't, like as a kid, I was so disconnected from my reality. So I didn't think about it that much. And so I can see that would be interesting. I thought that was a silly thing when they put it in, and I can see that I was wrong. So Roscoe.
Oh, I guess I was in the chat room, forgot. The only thing I was going to comment is our university over-enrolled, anticipating that more students would drop, and then they didn't. And so we're actually larger than we've ever been.
Interesting. And you can do it because it's digital, right? I mean, it would have been harder to do that over-enroll in physical. Yes. You couldn't. And that's the thing that's interesting is for I think we'll see it first in universities before we see it but the ability to scale, is digital in a digital way is different than what you can do physically.
Well, and as Michael pointed out, the whole room negotiating is gone, and that's amazing too. I mean, so
yeah, Bruce, and then Michael, and then Stevie.
I want to focus in for a minute with you, Aaron, on that point you raised about how the students are reacting to that, getting that attention. And I'm wondering, is there some way that you can think of, or that anybody can think of, that we could begin to track those events that seem to really have a good effect and figure out ways of using them more and more, spreading the word about that kind of an activity? Because it seems to me that when you can generate that kind of an excitement by using the remote technique, that all teachers ought to know about it and ought to know how to do it. And so the thought occurs to me, is there some way that we can spread that idea when it turns out to work this way?
Well, we're doing the best we can here in our little, we just have to invite more students. But I mean, that's the goal of this hour, is that we would attract, we attract more teachers, and that we have, that we're cross-pollinating, in the same way that we've done with media for the rest of the group. But that is what we're trying to get done. Stevie, and then Michael, then Sky, and we'll move on.
I was just going to add to that, when it comes to, I remember when I first started with online, work with my students, I had one student in particular, and I use this for my trainings as well. He was nonverbal, wasn't his thing. He did not talk in class. He was not a participator. And when I went to the digital setup, and this was years ago, this is before the whole online school thing. What I always remember is I was sitting at my computer one day, and that kid's name popped up on one of my screens because he was chatting me. And I went running down the hallway after the meeting was over, and I talked to the other teacher. He talks on the computer. You gotta text him. And when I gave that, presentation to the teachers, that, now that we're in this space, they're coming back to me and saying, Steve, yes, those kids that weren't talking, that weren't engaged, that weren't about this, like Aaron is saying, we dropped a little Bitmoji, we text them on this space. They're engaged, they're talking to us, they're sharing, that we never have gotten in the classroom. So it's really cool to see how they're adjusting in this space.
Michael, and then Sky.
Yeah, I would just generally second the power of chat as a really useful tool for all kinds of students. And to Aaron's point, I think it's intuitively logical why younger kids would enjoy Bitmoji, but I just say at the higher education level as well, students love getting stickers on their papers. And this is, as someone on the product side as well of building edtech technology, it is one of the highest feature requests, which actually for my product, we have almost working completely, but stickers are a great thing. I have faculty members who send them, in emails just as replies and things. So everyone seems to love them.
Some proof of, we used to do with Pixel Core, we used to have if you volunteered as a Pixel Core member, if you volunteered, you would get a Pixel Core staff shirt, because we needed to identify who you were, because you were all new to us. And so we printed these shirts, and it had a big Pixel Core, and it would have whatever the city was that we were doing some event. If you'd have Pixel Core, then you'd have staff, and then it would, New York or San Francisco or whatever. And it was a big deal if we didn't show up, if we didn't provide those. You know, it was like that was, and people would try to collect them. We had one person fly from one city to another to make sure, because they were trying to make a collection of the different cities. So it was, so I do get that part. There's some kind of participation trophy that is useful. Sky.
I'm curious, Michael, when you say stickers, is that a physical item or just digital?
No, digital stickers. But they
Okay, so
are.
You've gamified something.
Yeah, but I mean, you think about it, they work almost exactly the same way, where you drop it on a sheet of paper.
It's we used to get stars on our paper,
Yep.
right? It's the same concept. So I realize now we actually are talking to 3 audiences, and Guy is our token parent in the room. And you have raised.
I'm a parent too.
You am a parent. You am a parent too. I'm sorry. You're well vested in this, but I'm realizing though, as Guy has also raised other family in different eras, now that my children were raised in a homeschool environment for the quote betterment of the student. They're raising and getting good education out to them. I'm curious about cross-pollinating Aaron's experience with the teachers, and now we're also engaging parents more.
Yeah.
And they need to be a part of the conversation at the same time. So maybe we need more parents in this 1 hour.
Yeah. If we can find them. No, Kev.
Just a thought. It doesn't surprise me at all that the kids are reacting so engaged with stickers, because they've been trained with social media, Snapchat. That's what they watch. That's what they know. We are all we know the before time, but they don't. So I can well understand that promoting engagement from a teacher to a pupil by dropping in a sticker or a star or whatever, form of engagement in that direct form, that would definitely make sense to keep a kid engaged.
I'm going to move on because we're beating this one into the ground, but it's a good one. It's a good conversation. A good question. Next question.
I know my kids collected millions of coins in video games. Very motivated for that. James Babbitt is back with the delayed earlier, seeing Tiny World and Apple TV Plus. Any comment on how they are tracking the elephant shrew running on her trail?
So I don't know. How many people have seen Tiny Planet or Tiny World? Okay. You have to watch it. It's the most amazing wildlife photography in the history of the wildlife photography in the history of the world. So Plimsoll, who did it, I did a little research on it. So we've worked with them in the past. They're the big supplier for Nat Geo. So they definitely, Apple went to the one, right, that does a lot of these things. So the production company was already there, and I'm pretty sure that Apple just said, we would like you to do the best thing you could possibly imagine. And they said, well, that'll cost a lot of money. And Apple said, okay. They said, but it'll cost all the money. And then Apple's like, okay, you just have all the money to do this. And the budget, I can't even imagine the budget per episode watching these. As a person who does this, I don't know how they did all of it. Like I keep on, and there's a little behind the scenes in YouTube about it. And a couple things. The reason I wanted to talk about it today, and I won't talk about it too long, and we can talk. Anybody else can contribute to it. But one is that when I talk about the fact that we need to figure out ways to scale education so that we can have more content that's educational, that's what I'm talking about. Building all of the content at that level. That is the generalized content. Not all content works that way. But if we're talking about science, or we're talking about math, or we're talking about wildlife, because then what's missing right now is then a whole bunch of course study around all the things that were covered in that show. So you have a show like that, and then you have a bunch of discussion. Like I think that Apple is missing the boat in this case because they've created this incredible core content. There is, as a long tail, we're paying a subscription. If they gave me 3 hours of behind the scenes for every one of those episodes, and then they had 3 more hours of interviews with scientists talking about those animals and everything else, a lot of people would dig into that. And that would be literally, if you had a channel that only did stuff at that level, and then had behind the scenes of how it was done and behind the scenes with scientists about what it meant, I would just subscribe to that. I'd pay $10 a month just for things to come out all the time that were like that. But this isn't what's missing in the long tail, is that one piece of content potentially generates huge amounts of ancillary content that I don't think that traditional producers are getting their head around. I have a feeling that part of why they're not showing all of it is because there are pieces in there as a CG artist that I think are CG. Like, I literally don't think it's possible to shoot some of the stuff that they shot there. But again, it's a stunning piece of work. Go ahead, Sky.
I look forward to seeing it. But as you're talking about it, it does remind me of the initiative Discovery Channel was trying to do, but then and there was actually TLC was the learning channel, but we see what it has devolved into because it has to provide space for marketers, and that's where
it's just money. This is what happens when you're not trying to make money on the content. So Apple's making money on they're playing a different game. This is what I would call a Kaiser Sose model, which is, I don't know if you ever watched, anyway, so the Kaiser Sose model is he's always making money on something else, and that's when I call it a Kaiser Sose business model, he goes, he always overpaid you for everything that you did. That I'm afraid I've watched The Usual Suspects probably, 100 times. But the thing about Kaiser Sose was that he was always making money on something else. And so what we're seeing is content where you're not making money on that piece of content. You're making money on the whole package, and Apple is making money on a subscription. And what they have to do is make it valuable so they can spend money that you could never spend on content, before, and that's the thing that is distinct, is that they're playing an entirely different game. And it's why the current broadcasters and everything else are toast. Because Apple and Netflix and Disney and they're playing. There's a new arms race, and providers don't. I mean, it's literally like they're out there with swords, and there's like machine guns over here, and that's it. It's like in this arms race, they're not even in the ballpark. They can supply those people with things, but they're not. They can't compete because this had to have been millions of dollars per episode, and for a wildlife thing, that's just it's just incredible cinematography. But when I keep on saying educate, I think that there's a possibility somewhere in the future by scaling the classroom to where you have, you scale the classroom up to where teachers are reaching 1,500 students instead of 15. You fill in, you use some of that, build incredible content that helps students stay engaged, to be and deal with that. And then you fill in with a lot of one-on-one for the students that are having trouble where they're having trouble with it, but you keep on building content at that level. The problem with education content right now is that most of it's really hard to watch. My kids are pretty fidgety. They can watch Connections, which was made 40 years ago, for 6 hours straight. We watched the Tiny World for 3 hours straight. Not a peep, not moving. No one can talk in the room. They're not interested. It's not about attention. It's about the quality of what they're looking at. And it's about the amount of content per, the content density. And we just need to really think about that when we look at something like Tiny World, or we look at, again, a 40-year-old TV show, Connections, which is free on the Internet Archive, is still something that raptures, 11 and 12-year-old kids, and so that's we just have to look at it's. I firmly believe that ADD is not nearly as prevalent as people say it is. I think a lot of it has to do with the content density is too low for the speed at which the brain is moving. That's what ADD is that it's insufficient insufficient data rate for the CPU, is generally the problem, because most people that I know that have ADD, pretty smart. Anyway, so next question.
Michael Russo is in with a serious question. Does anyone know of any options on the horizon to get synchronous audio for remote musicians, as in playing together from different locations? Students in band, chorus, orchestra, and so forth cannot successfully perform together currently.
So there's riffing, and then there's riffing off each other or jamming that is not possible. Playing together is possible. Roscoe, do you want to talk about that?
Well, Jeff Francis actually had an interesting thing, and he was talking about for his school, which is that they're actually going back to analog gear because that gets rid of the latency. That was between a pianist and a vocalist in a neighboring room.
In a neighboring room. We've done it online, and the thing that we did to do it online is what's called a global click track. So we had and we had to build an app that doesn't run anymore, so I have to do it again or find one. But we had an app built that would basically when you set go in the lead app, the other ones would basically play that click track for everybody, and usually a background track with a little click, so they could stay in sync. They're listening to that. They're not listening to each other. That's the key. You cannot listen to, if you heard us do Happy Birthday, you heard why you can't do that. They are not listening to each other. They're listening to the click track or the background track, and they're playing together. It's not perfect. There's changes in latency, so it's varying a little bit. So we also picked songs that were relatively, they weren't highly precise. Music that's really, really precise with lots of changes. Now you could do solos, so we could do something and then have someone, we drop over to somebody and have them do a solo and then go to someone else, and every once in a while do something that's there. And that worked, really well for some of the events that we worked on 8 years ago. So it was something that was done, but the global click track is the key. They have to have something that's playing to an atomic time, like to the millisecond, is playing them all the same thing in their ear. Start with Happy Birthday today, but it's as long as they all hear it. Now again, there's variance, but they just can't listen to each other. And you can actually get something that it doesn't sound perfect, doesn't sound like analog or latency or there's all this stuff, but it does. It's impressive when you get these moments where it works, and for audiences, we've had that be enough. We were doing it for like corporate events. It was like a bunch of people play together as 3 minutes in a thing. We weren't trying to play a whole concert, so I don't know how everyone was really impressed because it didn't. No one thought that was possible. Even we didn't think it was possible when they asked us. Anyway, next question. Oh, go ahead, Tony. Or first, Tony.
I just wanted to ask, does it have to be live in terms of the chorus? And the reason why I mention that is because my church, we have a preteen and children's choir that sings together. And so because of COVID, they are not in the same place. But on Sunday morning, what they do is their Sunday to sing, they rebroadcast the children's choir singing at their various locations, and it's a recording. And of course, it's in sync and it sounds fantastic and all of that. So I just wanted to know if that was an option.
Well, that's definitely the way you can building those records is definitely something that's very doable. If as soon as you go down that path, having people listen to the other people that have already, I think we've had a couple discussions about this, and maybe we ought to do a second hour where we actually break it down and what apps people are using for that. What app is that? People have talked about an app. I haven't found one that is particularly good at this. But
Aloha Elk is Aloha Elk. Jeff Francis just put in the chat.
Aloha Elk.
Elk.
Okay. What a name.
As in, it's not a moose, it's an elk.
Go ahead, Stevie.
No, I was just going to say too, I'm thinking about this from the teacher room and what they're doing. And one thing that I've been too deep into right now is TikTok and how they do duets where they'll have the video playing and then they'll just keep adding to it as they go. So, using something like, we're using Flipgrid for our videos. We were just talking with Roscoe on the chat with that. But if they can, add like duetting themselves and kind of build to the song as they go along and bringing it all together at the end, it'll be pretty cool.
TikTok is a pretty amazing cauldron of experimentation. It's fun to watch because it's constantly evolving. And I don't know whether it's my feed is evolving or whether the whole thing's evolving, but the quality of the stuff that I see gets better all the time. Next question.
Our own Bruce Francis out of Naples, I'm assuming Florida, not Italy, because that would be weird, says, if a teacher wants to arrange a spontaneous Zoom meeting with a remote student outside of class, is there an easy way to do it?
Go ahead, Michael.
There's, I guess, two things that may or may not help. One is I keep a fairly readable personal URL in Zoom. So instead of just having your meeting ID, you can rename it. So I actually forget what mine is off the top of my head, but it's usually like, Zoom / your domain name or something / like mine will say Michael Ball in there somewhere. And so if it comes up to something like that, it's just, hey, hop on a Zoom call in 10 minutes over email. That works. The other thing that can be really helpful is Google Calendar, if you're using it, has built-in functionality to let people book a meeting. And if you're using the Zoom integration with Google Calendar, then that when a student books that meeting, you can set up appointment slots as the name that they use. And you get a notification, they get a notification, and then the Zoom integration just adds a meeting link to that meeting once it's created on a calendar. And because it's on a calendar, ideally no one forgets that this happens, which is really nice for some students. And then there's other services that are nicer than the Google Calendar one that work the same way.
Go ahead, Bruce, and then Roscoe.
Yeah, those are very helpful. The one thing about it is that I get this with my kinds of students. I want to call them at the last minute. I'm kind of pushy that way. And so I find that if they're on Teams, I have them on a list, and it's like making a phone call to them, a video call, and they're right together. And there doesn't seem to be anything analogous in Zoom to that. That's what I was really asking about.
I actually think that there is. I think that Zoom has been kind of pushing this like friends and connections and everything else, which drives me crazy. I don't want another window open from Zoom, but there is this new window that has, other friends, and you go to a home and there's a bunch of ways to throw that in. So I think that that's what it's designed to do. I hate it, but I can see how it could be more spontaneous. Roscoe and then Michael.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm in my office, I actually have office hours by just leaving a Zoom room open, and students just pop in when they want to. They know, that you're around. And then if I'm not actually have the Zoom room open, I do get a notification, a text message saying somebody's trying to get to me. And so, yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of the spontaneous sort of outside Zoom communication, well, I guess to Alex's point, Zoom does have a growing team / chat platform within it. I don't actually know anyone who uses it.
Everyone just shuts off the window. You're like, oh.
Yeah. But what I would say for some of that stuff is, and especially since you're working with PhD students in what I assume is a smaller group, we all use Slack for our smaller group communication. So, I mean, to the point where I'm now in like 24 Slacks, and it's kind of a problem, but because each group has their own. But for the teaching assistants, the lab meetings that I work with, Slack is the place where we will have those discussions. And Slack has video calling built in, which sometimes that's enough for Zoom. But otherwise, if you want to set it up, you can also drop a Zoom integration into your Slack channel. And then you have like one button to say like, let's just add a meeting right now or jump on a call, and it drops the link in.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, some people like the Zoom interconnections, but you have contacts, and under contacts, you could have internal and external contacts. So here at the university, it's real easy because the students have the accounts, the faculty have the accounts, so you can sort of show what's there. And Guy, I know we have Zoom rooms. In Zoom rooms, you could name the room and you just punch it and you go to it and you could list everyone you were there. It keeps a list of all your previous calls. So we've been doing that sort of quick getting in and out of things just by using the Zoom room list and the internal external contact list.
Next question.
Kate Gallagher from Berkeley says, I was sharing my screen in Zoom and running the slides for another teacher's professional development workshop. Her video and audio kept breaking up for me, but not for the participants. Was that because I was sharing my screen? Has anybody else experienced that?
Yeah, it sounds like a local internet problem if it's not breaking up for everyone. I mean, usually if it's breaking up for everyone, then it's a thing. If it's breaking up just for you, it's a personal problem. No, I think probably it's your connection to do that, and your screen share up. What's odd is that it would break up coming down for you because your screen share up is going to take it's going to take as much bandwidth as Zoom can take. But typically Zoom is, from my observation, 3.25 megabits per second up, and it's capped at that. So if your internet is close to that, like a 5 meg up, you could have problems. Generally, my rule of thumb is you want at least twice as much bandwidth. If you go to speedtest.net You want twice as much bandwidth as you think you're going to use in both directions. And so if you don't test that and you don't have that tested, then you should, if it's testing lower than that, then there's a whole host of idiosyncrasies that you may see with any of these services. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, this is another reason I actually, if I'm doing anything for the class, I do it based out of my university computer, and I VPN or I use Chrome Remote Desktop to get to it, just because it takes care of all those bandwidth issues. Just a solution, possibly.
Next question.
Tony Mobley from the panel in Newman, Georgia, says the governor of Georgia is being sued for reopening schools too early, putting students and staff at risk. Are any other states experiencing this?
I think most of the other lawsuits are going the other direction, which is forcing governors to allow certain counties to open. That's what we're seeing in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. So I think that the legality of statewide shutdowns is being called into question. So I think that's the direction that it's going right now. I do think it's dangerous to put everybody. I mean, putting a bunch of students together is crazy right now, in my opinion. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, our local districts are staggering and taking personal, making different choices. So some are this week, some are 2 weeks out. And so, which I like. That means that they're looking at their resources and what they think they can do and making their own decisions.
Next question.
Tony Anabopoulos in Missouri says, any idea how to remove the new warning dot from screen recordings made on iOS 14? I make screen recordings with voiceover, and my recordings now have the microphone is on dot in the corner. I edit in iMovie for this semester. Hope to use LumaFusion in the spring. If there is a solution there.
Huh. That's an interesting problem. I'm sure the engineers didn't think that one out. Like the engineers doing the warning dot didn't think about the screen capturing issue that would create. Yeah, I don't think there's any. We'll research that. But I bet you that was literally one team not thinking about what that would do.
Did you check to see if it was there on clean feed on HDMI out? Maybe take a look.
But that, again, the problem there is that you don't want to have it be, you don't want to have to record to an external device if you're just trying to record how to do something.
Yeah.
Interesting problem. Next question.
Kate Gallagher is back from Berkeley, says, I'm a K-5 science educator and I need to attach more things to my 2015 MacBook Air through the USB ports. Any recommendations for a USB hub?
Go ahead, Jason.
Anything from OWC is going to be fantastic. The 2015 MacBook Air has Thunderbolt, I believe, Generation 2, which means you've got a lot of great options. So yeah, I would look at Otherworld Computing. Their docks are second to none.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I second that. Otherworld Computing. That's most likely a Thunderbolt hub though. Belkin also has good ones. Having a Thunderbolt dock will allow you to get more types of connections in. You could get display out with that. But if you strictly need just USB, there's depending on how many ports you need. This is a nice Belkin USB 3 portable thing.
That's what I'm using right here.
Yeah, and it feels solid. It has weight to it. It's not like there's just air inside. There's weight to it, and I like electronics that are solid.
Yeah, the Belkin one is the one I've had this one for I don't know how long, and it just sits in my backpack, and it works really great. That's my backpack one. The Thunderbolt ones can get a little bit larger and give you a lot more tools in that process. So it just depends on what you're looking for, but. There. Next question.
Lawrence Strobe, who's usually on the panel from Hermosa Beach, says, does anyone have experience using a 360 Meeting Owl camera in a classroom setting? And gives a link there. Does it work, or are there better alternatives?
I am not familiar with the Meeting Owl. Is that the one that kind of turns, I think it turns around based on voice direction, if I'm correct. But we don't have any opinion. Don't know. Yeah, we're going to have to move on that one. Sorry about that, Lawrence.
I'd get distracted and watch the head swiveling all the time for the first couple of days. Laura Thompson from Beaumont, Texas says, does anyone have any experience with students who are in dev ed math courses at the university level, taking them strictly online? I know we've had some issues with our students that were underprepared to take it from math, taking their math online this semester.
We got stumped again. Oh, that's harsh. It's harsh. Go ahead, Bruce.
It's just an idea that I would gather from what has happened to me once I've started watching this and then starting to use YouTube to figure out the different kinds of things that I want to learn. And I'm amazed at how YouTube videos can take apart math problems and show you so quickly and so easily. Maybe that kind of an approach would help with learners who are having developmental problems. I'm kind of a developmental problem student in math myself. And so figuring out those things, they just work wonderfully for me.
I feel like there is this, and again, I look at that tiny world as this little glimpse into the future of, if we put the resources and we got storytellers who are really good in Hollywood to build our education products, got the scientists together and the teachers together and this, and really thought about how do we make it, but have it get written and then rewritten and dulled down. That's the thing that Hollywood's really good at, is rewriting a lot of stuff and having lots of versions and really thinking about how is it going to land on somebody when they go through it. And we just don't get that very often. And YouTube, you get more of it. And I think that figuring out things that we know, like we know that we're not arguing anymore about Pythagorean theorem, for very much. I mean, most of us are pretty much agree that's a known set. So let's build incredible animations about that so that we don't have to, because no one really knows why kids don't know why the Pythagorean theorem is important, but building animations that A, showed why is important, and B, why it works is kind of the thing. And there are some stuff on YouTube, but I still feel like, for some reason, I'm obsessed with that one specifically. Of no one's hit the mark yet, where you could watch something for 2 minutes and completely get it. And I think that's possible with many things, especially math and science. Jason.
If I can back up to Tony Adamopoulos' question about that screen recording dot, I was racking my brain about how to get rid of that in a screen cap, and then it occurred to me, easiest way to do it is to plug it into the Mac and screen cap that way directly through QuickTime. You could also use ScreenFlow. That'll completely fix your problem. Very good. Very good. Last question.
Last question comes from our friend Serena Catania. Hi, Serena. There is an app for syncing up multiple streams. Can somebody talk about how we do that for a Final Cut Pro or Premiere?
With Final Cut, you can, if you have audio going into all of them, you can just say sync by audio. The other way that you can do it is in a multi-track event or a multi-track project. The other one you can do is set markers on each one. I know exactly what, you set markers and then it'll sync by the markers. So take all your multi-tracks and just sync them up. Now I use that because I find it to be more precise than the using the audio, or less trouble. I just go manually through it and set my markers of where I want it to start, and then I have it, and then I'll lock it in. John, and then Bill.
As we're getting near the end, something happened this week that gives me a great deal of hope of exciting things happening in education. I don't know if people read the newsletter called EdSurge, but they announced Karen Cater, who was the CEO of the Digital Promise. Prior to that, she was at the U.S. Department of Ed and did the National Ed Tech Plan. Prior to that, she was head of education at Apple, has left the Digital Promise and is going to a private company. I think she may be returning to her roots at Apple, and that would be good news for Apple and education.
Yeah, very good news. Again, I think that, they could do a lot of damage there if they wanted to. Sky, and then Bill.
Back to the syncing question. Yes, just put all of your sources into a Premiere timeline, highlight all that, hit right click, and about a third of the way down of the many options you have, there's sync audio, and choose sync to audio as your option within the option.
Good, Bill.
Yeah, just for those who are using Final Cut 10, since she asked about it, the key to doing any building multi-clips, which is the container that Final Cut uses for multicam, is to set the angle beforehand. If you don't set the angle, you can get your clips strung out linearly, but if you set an angle, different ones, A, B, C, D, E, works fine. And then say use sync. Either it starts with listening to audio, but if you set markers or have any time code, including camcorder time code, it'll look there as secondary and tertiary sources for syncing clips.
Go ahead, Brian.
And just to add to Sky, you can use audio, but if you don't have audio on all your sources in Premiere, like Alex was suggesting, you can set markers or endpoints and sync up that way in Premiere as well.
And to go back, Michael Ball. Oh, go ahead, Sky.
Well, and that's why you have a clapper. It's a physical representation of an audible spike.
And I use the movie slate on my iPad a lot. It's useful.
Sure, and it's a free app. There's many of them out there.
Michael posted a Pythagorean theorem link to the thing. He's the closest. Like he's the closest. He goes off on a couple different tangents that he doesn't quite make it. Like he's so close to, I've watched that one a couple times thinking he's close, but it's not there yet, but it's close, but in another world, I would just get to do math. The problem for me is that math is teaching math. The problem in school right now is it's not applied. I don't. That you get this thing where you talk about fractions or ratios or whatever, and they get into all these little numbers that don't mean anything. I learned all my math because I was trying to do things with it, and I needed to know this. And I couldn't find it at high school. When I was 13 years old, I couldn't figure out how to do it. So my uncle bought me, lectures in physics. Just dig through that, find the section that I needed and figure out how to do that thing. And I'm 13 years old, just kind of working through it, And so the key is figuring out how to challenge students. And I think that to get to what Stevie works on, the robotics, those types of things, I think kids learn a lot faster when you have something you have to get done. And then you need to learn that. And I'll say it over and over again. My process of teaching when I teach is challenge the student to do something that they're insufficient for, and then give them the tools that they need to do that as they go. That's it. I'm not trying to teach you anything. I'm just challenging you to go do that. This is the thing you have to get to, and then I'll just keep on handing you things as you go through it and keep on answering your questions. But to me, that's the holy grail, is figuring out how to do lots of that. For that process. And I think math gets really easy when you're trying to figure it out, because then you're like, if I could only figure this one part out. Like building a catapult from scratch, I found to be really, as a kid, to be really complicated, especially a trebuchet. Just because you have to figure out all the math and of how it's going to go and the lengths and you can hack it out. But there's something about now when someone talks about some of the math and leverage and fulcrums and everything else, the whole thing makes sense. You're like, oh, that would be so much easier if I could have just done it in a calculator. If I wanted to repeat it, And one of the first things I did when the physics came out for Cinema 4D was I built a trebuchet, and because it had a physics thing. But I was like, this is what kids could be playing with, And the funny thing is the person that could probably make the most difference in this is the founder of Roblox, because the person who founded Roblox used to own a company that made working model and interactive physics. And so I'm surprised that he hasn't unleashed his earlier days inside of Roblox, because he's already got all the kids. Anyway, it's a whole nother. Roblox physics sims are actually really good for obvious reasons. But his earlier years were done something much more interesting. Anyway, we're done for the day, only today. I want to thank all the educators who came. Thank all the folks that are here. It's great having you, attendees, the panelists. I love having this conversation. So I hope. Oh, I got a little ribbon. That's so cute. So anyway, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming and having this conversation. I think it's a really important one. Hopefully, we can keep on growing it and having more and more educators fill the panel, more and more educators fill the attendees, and keep cross-pollinating, figuring out how we learn from each other and figuring out the best ways to get this stuff done, because I think I literally think this conversation could change the world. When we do this little conversation that we've started here on Saturdays could change the world if we figure it out.
And that's
Or
a
as we
wrap
figure it
on
out.
show 200. Congratulations,
200?
Alex.
200 and
Wow.
200 days. Well done, everybody. Even when Zoom crashed one time, like we figured it out. We survived it. So it's great. So thank you all, and we'll see you all tomorrow. For those of you who want to come and just hang out with us, Sunday tends to be a little bit more fluid, and we've got another great week planned. So we'll talk to you all.